Welcome to the Wadsworth Music Showcase. I'm Mike Foster, the host of Wadsworth Music Showcase, and our band today is the Wadsworth High School Jazz Band. Wow. That sounds excellent. I'd like to introduce Mr. Steve Hadges, the Wadsworth High School band director and the director of the jazz band here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, Mr. Hadges, what was this piece that you just heard?
This was a good old jazz standard called Night Train, and we featured on trombone, actually our entire trombone section, Jason Hadges as a soloist on trombone, Patrick Lamuel on guitar, and Dan Holsworth on tenor sax.
Wow, that's great. So these kids meet how often?
This is a totally after school ensemble. On Tuesdays and Thursdays we meet after school. No credit. These are people who love music, love jazz, and out of the volunteerism that they have, they play throughout the entire area and for fun. So.
Yeah, this is great. I think this is the first time this group's played on TV before. You know, I saw the guitar player over there. What's your name? Patrick. He was checking out the camera and stuff. He's like, hey, ladies, you know, he's checking it out. It's kind of cool. How do kids get involved in a jazz band here at Wadsworth?
They go through an audition process, and whoever makes, we need 4 or 5 trumpets, 5 trombones, 5 saxes, rhythm section, and it's just an audition process, and whoever makes it gets in the band. And if there are any extra people, we'd like to form another jazz band someday, but so they have to audition to get into it.
And so any instruments can get in a jazz band here?
Well, no, actually you can see the instrumentation here. Trumpets, trombones, saxes, and then guitar, bass, drums. Not flute, clarinet, although on occasion we will have flute and clarinet added to the group. So.
Excellent, excellent. Why don't we go through and run through some introductions of the band, if you don't mind?
Okay. On Barry sax, we have Dan Buckingham, tenor sax, Andy Gunch, Kyle Steinkirchner on alto sax, David Sickles on alto sax, Dan Holsworth on tenor sax. And on piano, we have Alexandra Pappas. Over here is Joel Ott on congas and drum set. They interchange. Jason Liddy on drum set also. Patrick Lamuel on guitar. Then from your left to right is Todd Painter trombone, Jason Hadges trombone, Phil Smith trombone, Jay Dewan trombone, and Colin Van Dyke trombone. And over here are bass players Andy Brady, Becky Thomas, Alan Hadges, Alex Sterling, and Andy Wedstein. Thank you, Andy Wedstein. So we have about 20 people. And we also have a singer, Megan Chrislett, but she's not with us today because she's sick, unfortunately. So.
She's got the crud, huh? Yeah, pretty bad. So how long have you been teaching?
21 years.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, a lot.
That's a long time. How long have you been here at Wadsworth?
4. It's my 4th year.
4 years. Okay, so what really got you involved? Because you do have a history of being in jazz bands yourself, a performer, but how did you get involved with being a musician?
Well, my dad actually was a band director, and so music was always around our house. He was also a choir director for our church for about 40 years, but he played in a group for about 30 years. And I always would hear him warm up when I was a little kid, and it just stuck with me. It's something I love to do, and I'd hear it all the time each week in my house, and it just seemed like a good thing to do, so I love music.
Great. So did you know that you wanted to play jazz when you were in high school at this? Were you involved in a band like this?
Yeah, definitely. We had a nice jazz band when I was in high school that really played a lot. We tried to get to every place in our community and outside the community. We even traveled to other states and jazz festivals and really had a good time. And then continued that in college, of course, and went to some pretty amazing places.
Yeah, so you did go, in fact, like overseas when you were in college. Tell us a little bit about your experiences being in the, what band you were in, what college band you were in, and tell us a little bit about that.
University of Akron. At that time, 1980, they had a great jazz band, and we made, I think we were one of 4 college jazz bands to make it in the world to the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland. And then we also played at the Nice Jazz Festival. And, you know, people like Santana and Dizzy Gillespie and Brecker Brothers and all kinds of people were there. And we got to talk to them all, and it was a great time. It was an experience. Toured a bit of Switzerland and France and Italy. Did kind of a circle there for 2.5 weeks, and it was really great. So.
That's really crazy to be able to do that. And you were just like 18 or 19 at the time, right?
Yeah. It was my second year of college, and I got in that top jazz band, and by the time I graduated, then I was playing the first trumpet, and so I know what it's like to be the last trumpet chair and the first trumpet chair, and I've been through the whole sequence.
Been through the ringer. Well, that group had recorded a record, if I'm not mistaken. And if any of you vinyl collectors are out there, if you check out Time Traveler Records in Cuyahoga Falls, there's a couple copies there. And it's pretty hot record if you're into vinyl. But I heard that they're also trying to release that on CD, or someone did do a CD of that.
Our director made us a copy on CD and gave it to all the band just a few years ago. And I don't know if it's actually he reproduced it, but for us he made a.
Okay, and who else played in that band? Anyone that we might know now in the area?
Well, director of the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra, Jack Shantz, was one of the members, and they've got just a great band up in Cleveland. They're getting pretty well known throughout the country, actually. Very many other people ended up as college professors, as people who are playing in New York City right now, on the West Coast, just all over the place. There's some really amazing players at that time.
Wow, that's great. Now, we're talking about you as a performer. When did you as a performer, which is really an art, professional performing your music, being a professional musician is a real art, but I believe also like teaching is an art. When did you kind of make that switch from being a performer or going into teaching as an art and using these guys as your instruments into having them make music?
Well, actually, I went into music ed. I wanted to be a band director. But once I got to college, and sometimes you play 6-7 hours a day, I started to realize if you just practice a lot, you can do amazing things. So at the same time, I always wanted to go into education and teach kids, but then I found out that I loved performing, and I got quite good at it. So then I would play in many professional groups, classical as well as jazz, and I just started doing that. But then after I finished my degree, I went into teaching, tried to keep up some of the playing, but then realized that really teaching was what I wanted to do as a profession, and I would just keep my playing up on the side until about maybe 9 years ago. Then having kids and always being gone from home, I had to hang that up for a while, and who knows if we'll start it up again.
Those darn kids.
Oh, it was worth it. So.
Yeah, great. Now back to these darn kids here. What type of concerts or what type of playing does this ensemble here do?
Well, you mean where do we perform and the kinds of anything from our own jazz concert, which is coming up in April, to playing at nursing homes, to playing at Women's City Club events, the square outside. You know, whoever wants to listen to jazz, we'll be there to play for them. And even the middle school, as people may not know this, but you are the director of the middle school jazz band, and you've played at the Herb Fest, and so on and so on. So. We are happy to play. Whoever would like to hear jazz, we're going to be there for them. So.
Right, great, awesome. And you had mentioned that there's a concert coming up. When is that concert?
April 19th on a Tuesday. We are going to have a concert at OJ Work, 7:30 p.m. Hopefully everybody will be coming out there. The junior high jazz band will be there, high school jazz band, as well as a couple numbers from our percussion ensemble.
And how much does it cost?
It's free, open to the public.
Great. What tunes? What would you expect for us to hear at this concert?
Well, you'll hear this next tune that we're going to play here called Sun Cat, but you'll hear tunes from the 40s, from the 50s, into the 80s and 90s, modern jazz as well as old-time jazz. We try to mix up the variety.
Will you be playing any Black Sabbath?
No Black Sabbath.
That's good. That's really good. All right. So let's hear another tune. Enough talking. Let's hear some music. This is the next number you said is what?
Is going to be Sun Cat. It's a Latin jazz tune. We feature Alex Sterling on trumpet, Patrick Lamuel on guitar, Joel Ott and Jason Liddy on percussion.
Excellent. Here we go. Sun Cat. Great job. Awesome. Nice job. There's such a great core sound to this group there's a maturity to the group that you normally don't hear from a high school group. Do you agree?
Yeah. These kids are pretty special. They work hard. They really have developed that professional sound, and I can't complain at all. It's really nice to work with them.
And how many seniors do we have here? We have 2. How many juniors? And the rest are sophomore and freshmen. This group's going to be sticking around for a while.
I think so.
Well, we're looking forward to it. The Wadsworth bands in general have a lot of, are just really great right now. Can you tell us a little bit of what's happening with the symphonic bands at the school right now?
Yeah, symphonic and concert band. We finally have grown to the point to where we divide the band into 2 groups in concert season. So we have 2 levels, an advanced level because we have 9 through 12, grades 9 through 12, and of course most of the younger people are not going to be as proficient as the older people. Although if they do qualify for it, then they can make it into the symphonic band. But we have 2 groups, went to district contest in March, and both groups got straight ones from the judges in the auditorium, and that means both groups are going to state, and I think that's the first time in history that Wadsworth has sent 2 concert bands to a district contest.
That's great. And when you say state, you don't mean like athletic state events, right? Or is this a little bit different?
Yeah, it's not a first place. It's basically you get ratings of a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and so 1 is the best superior. And all judges in that auditorium gave both of our bands 1s, and I think our symphonic band was the only band to get a 1 in sight reading also, and out of the entire site event at Worcester. So yeah, they give you ratings, and then whoever gets a 1 rating goes on into the state at a higher level.
Well, that's great to just hear this great music, and you don't hear, true music coming out of high school kids like this, and it's great to have you guys on today. Before we close the show, I would like to know, Mr. Hadgis, if there's any people interested in knowing jazz out there, do you recommend any jazz CDs that they can go out and purchase?
Well, you had said that, I thought, wow, how do you recommend just 5 or 6 of them? But so I wrote down a couple things. Louis Armstrong in his greatest Hot 5 and Hot 7 group that he used to have would be an album that everybody should have if you're looking for a span of jazz from the beginnings to the present day.
And that was really considered the first type of jazz, true jazz, not the Dixieland stuff, but the true jazz was the Hot 5 and Hot 7 recordings.
Right, and that's why it's a milestone in starting this entire movement.
So if you're thinking of It's a Wonderful Life, or what's that song called? You guys want to?
It's a
Wonderful World. It's not quite that type of Louis Armstrong.
No, that was later. Louis kind of brought his amazing personality to everyone, and so that was later, actually, not way back. That was, who knows, in the 60s and 70s, where he decided to start to bring that stuff out in his voice. But he was the innovator of that jazz style, you could say.
Great. What else?
There's an album I like called The Greatest Jazz Concert Ever, and it was featuring Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and an array of great people. And at that time, Charlie Parker didn't even have a saxophone, because who knows if he left it somewhere, or Charlie Parker had a habit of some pretty bad habits, you could say, but he was one of the greatest alto saxophone players of all time. And he didn't even have his regular sax, so he picked up a piece of junk sax, used a plastic white mouthpiece, and sounded like amazing. It was one of the greatest live recordings made, I think, and that's something. Miles Davis. It's hard to name one album of Miles Davis's, but Birth of the Cool, Bitches Brew, Kind of Blue. There's Sketches of Spain. I don't know what my favorite one is.
Well, all of those that you mentioned, really, with Miles Davis, there's very distinct sounds with each album. So don't think you get one album and it's like, oh, that's Miles Davis. They're very different.
That's amazing about Miles. He was the innovator of many different styles of jazz. So, it's hard to say one thing for him. John Coltrane, of course, Giant Steps. I guess that would be the one that I think could be a milestone. But then, once again, John Coltrane went through many phases and developed many styles of jazz. Charles Mingus, Aham. Album. I've got that album, and it's just one of those different kind of style things that no one else was doing at the time. Sonny Rollins, anything by him, I guess. Tenor Madness is an album that I had. Duke Ellington, Ellington at Newport. It's hard to say one Duke Ellington album, but that man was just amazing. And Dave Brubeck Quartet, because he brought in another element into jazz that was a little more modern, with different time signatures and so on. And there's so many other singers and players that you just can't mention, but those are a few.
Great. Well, that would be a good start for anyone that would be interested in getting their library of jazz CDs. Thanks again for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone. You guys sound great. And why don't we do a Night Train as we fade out here and finish off with that again. That was excellent. Thank you for joining us today, and join us again when we have our next music showcase, which I think is going to feature the Orchards. So have a good day.